Hello Sitecore Techies, welcome back to my Sitecore Diaries, your ultimate guide to digital experience excellence. If you are new here, this is your go-to channel for everything Sitecore and .NET. I am Jitendra Ghanekar, Sitecore Technology MVP 2024, 3 times Sitecore certified and XM Cloud certified. In today's video, we are diving into a crucial topic: top 10 security risks in website built on CMS. Whether you are a developer or architect or a business owner, understanding these risks can protect your website from potential vulnerabilities and keep your digital experience secure. From SQL injection to outdated softwares and plugins, we will break down each risk and provide you with practical tips to mitigate them. Stay tuned because this information could save your site from a potential breach. Before we jump in, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell icon so you never miss out our latest update. So, ready to secure your website? Let's get started. So, our first risk is SQL injection. So, let's see what is SQL injection and how it impacts. SQL injection, it is also called as a SQLI, is a web security vulnerability that allows an attacker to interfere with the queries that an application makes it to database. This can allow an attacker to view, modify, or delete data that they are not normally able to access. So SQL injection is basically what it does is if your application is making queries to the databases, then it interfere with those queries and work on modifies the queries which can edit your data, which can modify your data, which can delete your data. So that is called as a SQL injection. So how it occurs, let's take an example. So on your website you have a page for a login, so username and password, and there is a login button. So once you log in, you are firing a query: select star from users where username is equal to user123, that is the value which you are getting from the text box of a username, and password is the value where you are putting the password in the password text box. Okay, so this is the simple query it is getting built in. Now the hackers has put user123 or 1 is equal to 1. Okay, and there is no sanitization done on this text box or validation is done on this text box. Now this query will get converted to something like this: select star from user where username is equal to 123 or 1 is equal to 1 and password is equal to this. So now if you see query, if you are not passing the password, it will automatically get bypassed. Okay, so there is no need of a password if you run this query. So in that case, user will have an unauthorized access altogether. So this is called as a SQL injection vulnerability or SQL injection risk. Now why it is critical? First point is data exposure. So attacker can access, modify, or delete a sensitive data, and that data can be personal information or some credit card details. So that can expose your personal data to the hackers. So it is very critical. So data exposure is the first thing. Then you have an authentication bypass. So authentication bypass, just we saw the example that a malicious user can bypass the authentication mechanism and gain the unauthorized access. So that SQL injection attacks can get the authentication bypass. Data integrity threats. So attackers can change the database entries, impacting the integrity of the information. So assume that you have some queries which you are building, which are affecting your databases or deleting some data. So if the user is able to get that query and modify that query as per their attack, so they can delete the queries or impact it can update the database. So data integrity threat is there. Financial damage. Successful SQL attacks can lead to a loss of business revenue, regulatory fines, and damage reputation. So obviously, if you have such kind of attacks, your reputation will also go down. There might be some legally you might have some regulatory fines also. So it might impact your financially. Complete system takeover. In some few cases, in several cases, SQL injection can be used to execute command that allows attacker to compromise the underlying server. So complete system will be taken over by the hackers. So that can be done by using the SQL injection. So this is the reason why SQL injection is a very critical. First is the data exposure, authentication bypass, data integrity threat, financial damages, and complete system takeover. Now, how we can mitigate this? The first thing is use parameterized queries. Instead of embedding user inputs directly into SQL queries, use prepared statement where parameters can bound to values. This ensures the database interprets input as a data, not executable code. So the example which we have seen where we are building the query, so that query is taking as a code and that is getting executed. Instead of that, write a code where that values is treated as a data, not as a code. So how we can do this parameterized query? Just an example here. If you see, we are creating the SQL connection here, and then command is run, right? So this is how you can create a parameterized queries where you are not building the queries, but you are passing these values like here username as a parameter in the command. Okay, so that is how you can do a parameterized query, and which will help you to avoid a SQL injection. The next thing, which is best thing to do, is a use store procedure. So if you are using SQL queries, don't execute the SQL queries via the command itself. Okay, try to create a store procedure. So define SQL code in the store procedure on the database server instead of dynamic SQL in the application. This reduces the risk of SQLi since parameters are handled more securely. So use store procedure. Input validation and whitelisting. The example which we have seen, there is no validation done on the input or sanitization done on the input. Validate and sanitize user input to ensure they conform to expected format. So they execute whatever the values you are getting, so make sure that those are the expected format. For example, only allow alphanumeric input for the username. So input validation and whitelisting. Then use ORM, relational mapping libraries. So using an ORM like entity framework in .NET, abstract database queries and often automatically handles SQL injection depends. So try to use the entity framework which will help you, or ORM basically, which will help you to avoid the SQL injection. Limit database permission. Minimize the database privileges of the application SQL account. Avoid select star and allow only necessary permission to each application tool. So the SQL user which you are using, give give that account a minimum required privileges on error handling. I think this is the key thing. So generally when we have the error page, so if you are not displaying the custom error messages, and you are directly showing whatever the error which you are getting on the screen, so it might contain the SQL syntax, the database structure, or where the query is not working. All those things getting displayed on the error page, and that will create a problem. So try to avoid error handling, because that will help hackers to perform the SQL injection. So these are the methods to mitigate the SQL injection. The next one is cross-site scripting. Let's see what is cross-site scripting and how it is done. Cross-site scripting, which is also known as XSS, is a security vulnerability that allows attackers to inject malicious scripts into web pages viewed by other users. This can compromise user data, hijack user session, and alter page content. XXX attacks are often performed using JavaScript, but other scripting languages can also be involved. So basically what is happen is users attack uh, your website and add some script in your website which gets saved, and someone else if is trying to access that your website, that script will get executed, and that script might have a malicious functionality which will impact your website. So let's take an example here. So if a user, you have a form which is feedback form, which is you are submitting the feedback from this form, and assume that the user have added this script. I'm just giving a simple example of a alert script. Okay, it can be anything. Okay, and assume that there is no sanitization done on your text box, then it will get saved into your database. Now as a user, I'm trying to view what are the different feedbacks I have. So I click on a view feedback. So what will happen is it will retrieve a data which is here a script. Okay, and that will get executed and the attack will be. So this is your XXX attack will happen. So this is how your SXX work. I'm giving a simple example here. Okay, now why it is critical? First thing is the session hijacking. So this method can steal your user sessions or user cookies that will gain unauthorized access to your account. Okay, so attackers can steal user session cookies, gaining unauthorized access to their account. So it can hijack your sessions details. Data theft. Sensitive information such as a username, password, credit card information can be captured by the malicious script. So if user have written some script which might ask you of these details and you provide it, then it may be your data might get theft. User impersonation. So as mentioned in the point 5, the user can hijack your session. So malicious script can perform action on behalf of authenticated user, resulting in unauthorized changes or a data theft. So if user is able to hijack the admin related roles, and it will act as an admin, then it can do many other things in the application that will impact your application. Phishing. SXX can be used to inject a fake login form or tricks users into the submitting sensitive information. So user can write a script, okay, which will either redirect to you a new website which is looking same like your website, or it can create a complete a login form and ask for a data from you, and once you submit it, that data, instead of going the data to your website, it will get inserted into the hacker database. So that kind of a phishing can be done by using the cross-site scripting. Malware distribution. This is another high chances of user using the SXX attack. Attackers can use SXX to redirect user to site hosting malware or initiate automatic download. So right now I have just shown you the alert script, right? User can write alert script. Instead of that, if you have written some code which will redirect user to the URL where you are downloading something, and in that downloading might be any exe or anything which can impact your application or your system. So that can also be done. So why it is critical? Because most importantly, it hacks the session. So session information is get hacked, your data is theft, user impersonation, phishing, and the malware distribution. These are the things which will impact you a lot. So that's the reason it is very critical, and you have to address the SXS. First thing which we have seen it, that your data is not validated or not sanitized. So you have to sanitize that. So validate and sanitize all user inputs to ensure they not contain the malicious code. And along with that is a very important that avoid using eval or a similar function that executes string input as a code. Now what is eval? The eval function in the JavaScript execute a string as a code. So when you are passing a string, it will execute as a code. So you can pass a code as a string and then it will get executed, but it's a risk with untrusted input due to the potential security vulnerabilities like a code injection. For safety and performance, it's the best to avoid using it. So validate and sanitize all user inputs, and Avoid using the function like eval. Next is the output encoding. It encodes the data before rendering it in the browser to prevent it from being interpreted as executable code, and use functions in your network or libraries like the HTTP utility.html encode method in the .NET. So when you are passing the data, there might be a case that you are using some tags which might treat it as a code. Okay, to avoid that, you can use the output encoding, the methods like http utility.html encode, which will encode those things. Okay, so what is output encoding? Output encoding converts potentially harmful characters in user inputs into a safe format for web display, preventing attackers like XXX. For example, you have a less than symbol that will become an LT semicolon. So similarly, you will this method will get encoded. So try to encode your output. Okay, so that will help in SXS attack. Set content security policies, CSP. Set a content security policy in your header to restrict the sources from which script can be downloaded, and this reduces the risk of executing malicious inline script. So now what is content security policy? Content security policy is defined which resources are allowed to load on your web page. So what should be loaded on your web page, that will be decided by the content security policy, CSP, which is your header, this information will be in your HTTP header. So it does this by specifying rules in the HTTP header about the sources of content that browser should consider safe. Okay, so set your content security policy to avoid the SXS attack. Avoid inline JavaScript. So minimize or eliminate inline JavaScript in HTML attributes like one click or one load to prevent SXS opportunities. So try to avoid the inline JavaScript. Use HTTP only cookies. Mark cookies as HTTP only to prevent them from being accessible via JavaScript, reducing the risk of cookie theft. Now, what is HTTP only cookies? HTTP only cookies ensures cookies can only be sent via HTTP request, not manipulated through script. So if you mark the cookies as HTTP only cookies, those will get transferred only via HTTP protocol. If you are trying to do it that via the script, it will not happen. So this is very important. Use HTTP only cookies. Then of course sanitize the HTML. So most of the time, what is the problem is your rich text. So if you are using a rich text, like if your application allows HTML input like a blog or content editor, which generally happens in CMS, like you are using the rich text box, use libraries like DOM purifier, anti-XXS, remove the any malicious tags or attributes. So there are external libraries which you can use to which will help you to remove any malicious tag or attribute which is there in your input. So these are the methods to mitigate the SXS cross-site scripting attack. Now the third one is cross-site request forgery. What and how? Cross-site request forgery (CSRF) is a web security vulnerability that tricks a user into executing unwanted action on a web application where they are currently authenticated. This can happen through malicious requests sent from another site or exploiting the user's browser. So cross-site request forgery is something where a web security vulnerability hacker that tricks the user into executing unwanted actions on the web application. So what is he supposed to do? Instead of that, a different thing, a different action he is doing. So let's see how it is done. So you have a website, okay, and you are browsing that website on the Chrome. You received a email from some mybankkd.com website, and you browse that there, okay, on the Chrome itself. Now the thing is, you are logged in on the mybank.com through the Chrome, and your request which is coming is www.bankkd.com. So it looks like a similar look and feel website. Now if you are your website is not sanitized, not validated, or not vulnerability is there for your cross-site request forgery, then what will happen is the token which is used in the login for which you have done already with the buyback.com, that can be used by this website. Okay, and then this website is asking to get username and password, card details, card pin, and save, and you will save that. Okay, then that saving is the data which is giving you are providing, it gets saved into the hacker's database. So that is how unauthorized access will get. Okay, user will get your unauthorized access. So that is how the cross-site request forgery is done. Now let's see why it is critical. First is obviously unauthorized action. So CSRF allows attackers to make unwanted changes on behalf of authenticated users, such as updating account details, making purchase, or transferring funds. So unauthorized actions are done which are not supposed to do by the anyone. Sensitive data exposures. Attacker can use CSRF to trigger action that reveal the sensitive information without the user knowledge. Widespread impact. Since CSRF relies on the user authentication within the application, it can affect a large number of users if exploited. Difficult to detect. The requests are typically legitimate and in appearance as they are used the user's session IP, making detection challenging without additional security measures. So as you seen in the example, that user is logged in via the authenticated website, okay, on the Chrome. So it is very difficult to find out this kind of issues. Okay, so because user is using the same session and the IP. Integrity and trust issues. So it can lead to a data corruption and loss of a user trust in the application. So these are the reason why this vulnerability is a critical and you need to address that. Now how, let's see how to mitigate this. First thing is use CSRF token. So use unique tokens for each session for form submission. CSRF tokens are generated by the server and embedded in the form server request. The server verifies the token when processing the request and preventing unauthorized requests. So you will create a token which will get verified with both the places, server side and the client side. So that is called a CSRF token. So if you see what is how it is done, say in HTML you might have this meta name CSRF token, and you will have a value of a CSRF token. And when you are submitting you see here, just submitting the value or posting the value, you are passing the CSRF token also, which is here. Okay, and then that CSRF token is get compared at the server side, and then if it is a valid authenticated authorized request, then only it will get processed. This is how it is done. Then same site cookies. So same site strict ensures that cookies are only set with the request originating from the same site, preventing cross origin request from leveraging the user authentication. So in the example which I have given, user has a www.buyback.com, but user is giving user has sent an email to www.buyback.com .com, right? So there's a little bit of difference, but actually the domain is different. So if you have a same site cookies, if the same site is cookies are enabled, so it will avoid that reading to those cookies. So what is same site cookies? Same site cookies are controlling how cookies are sent with a cross-site request. They ensures that cookies are only sent in specific context, such as within the same site or under a strict condition, reducing the risk of unauthorized action. So there is some rules where some restriction is applied on those cookies, like it should access within the same site only, then that will reduce the risk of unauthorized action. So use the same site cookies. Then user authentication and verification requires a re-authentication or multi-factor authentication. I think you can use a multi-factor authentication for sensitive actions, adding an extra layer of security even if CSRF attempt is successful. So that is the reason why you have most of the authentication now with the MFA, multi-factor authentication. The next one is the implement cross. So cross origin resource sharing policy. So configure CORS policies to allow only the trusted origin access to the API, thereby reducing the risk of unauthorized access from the other side. So you should use the CORS. So give the access only those domain which you are supposed to use or which is trusted domain. Okay, so use the CORS. Custom header requires that a specific custom headers like X requested with be included in the request. Only JavaScript running in the same origin can set these headers. So cross-origin requests won't include them. Now, what is custom headers like X requested with HTTP? What is X requested with a header? That is your custom header. It is a HTTP header is commonly used to identify Ajax request. So when a web client makes an Ajax request, it set this header to be the value XML HTTP request. This allows servers to distinguish between the regular and the Ajax request, so enabling them to provide a different response based on the request type. Okay, so custom headers also you can use. And then avoid HTTP GET for state changing requests. So avoid using a GET request for action that change server side state. So if you are changing any server side state, then don't use a GET request, use a POST request. So GET request can be easily exploited in CSRF attack, okay, via the image tags or link. Use the POST request for such action instead. So use POST request if your state is getting changes at the server level. So use the POST request. These are the ways you can mitigate the CSRF attacks. Fourth one, remote code execution, RCE. Remote code execution is a critical security vulnerability that allows attackers to run arbitrary code on server or a target machine from a remote location. This exploit can lead to a complete system compromise, as attacker can gain control over the system and potentially access sensitive data or execute malicious commands. So in this case, what happens is the hacker can take your control of your system and run the code from his machine to your machine, and that command can be any malicious command. Okay. So best example of a remote code execution is a WannaCry ransomware in 2017. So remote so what has happened May 12 2017, this WannaCry ransomware attacked almost 230k computers in more than 150 countries. So how it has happened is there's something called open door. Open door is it found a weakness. Open door is something which is finding a weakness in your system. So Eternal Blue is a tool which is developed by NSA USA, and this got leaked. Some part of it got leaked, and that it is used by the hackers. Okay, they found a weakness in Microsoft Windows like unlock door, and that allowed to enter a computer without a permission. It executed a malicious code to lock or encrypt all the files, making them inaccessible to the user. So they have executed the arbitrary code over the network, which is encrypted your files, okay, or log the files basically. Okay, so what has happened is now it has malicious your code. So now what is happening is that there's when you start the machine, it will a system, it will popping up the screen demanding the money to unlock the files. I think there's some amount they have asking, and it was getting double after 3 days if you didn't pay that. So it's, but not only that, it spread like a cold, like in humans, the cold spreads from one person to another. Similarly, it got spread from one computer to another, and that to another. So that is how it spread across the 150 countries, around 230k computers. So once it infected a computer, it will lock the user out of their files for encrypting them and making the files unreadable. To get the access back, the attackers demanded a ransom, usually $300 in Bitcoin, to be paid. If 15 didn't pay, they risk losing their data permanently. This is an example of a remote code execution, and it is most famous till now. That is in 2017 it has happened. Exact date is like 12 May 2017. Now why it is critical? Full system compromise. So RCE allows attacker to perform any action on the compromised server, including accessing database, installing malware, modifying critical files. So that This means it is giving a full system compromise data tape. Obviously, a data tape attackers can extract the sensitive data from the server, including customer data, financial information, and intellectual properties (IPs). Network propagations. Now we have seen that how it is spread. It's around spread across 150 countries, like a cold is spreading. Attackers can use the RCE to move laterally across the network, compromising the additional systems and extending their reach within an organization. Then the permanent damage and downtime. Attackers can delete files, shut down services, or launch ransom attacks, causing service outage and financial damage. Then it's difficult to detect and mitigate. So RCE attacks are often appear as a legitimate system processes, making them difficult to detect without specialized monitoring tools. So these are very critical: full system compromise, data theft, network propagation, permanent damage and downtime. So difficult to detect and mitigate. This is the reason why it is very critical and should be addressed. Now, how to mitigate those? The main reason why the 2017 issue was occurred is because of this, the regular update and patch software. So you have not updated your Windows system regularly, then it might have happened. Regularly patch application libraries and operating system to protect against known vulnerabilities. Many RCE exploit a target specific to unpatched software version. So this is a common reason for many of the attacks, that you need to update your softwares and the systems regularly. Input validation and sanitization. Strictly validate and sanitize all user input to prevent them from containing code or commands. This is a common mitigation you have. Only allow expected characters format, reject inputs that contain special characters like comma and etc. Disable unnecessary features. So disable any feature or module that allows code execution or system level access if they are not needed by the application. So your application doesn't require any access to execute any code, then you just disable that permission or that module. Again, this is very important: code reviews and security testing. So you need to regularly review your code for unsafe practice and conduct security testing to identify and remediate vulnerabilities that could lead to RCE. Automated scanning tools and penetration testing can help identify and the fix early in the development process already. So for the avoiding the remote code execution attack, you should have a regular code reviews and security testing before moving it to the live. So it will get early catch in the development phase only, and you can then mitigate those. Secure deserialization. Use secure deserialization practice to prevent a deserialization vulnerabilities. Make sure that data is not tampered in the deserialization process. As we are talking about the CMS, serialization, deserialization is very key thing. So it may be the case that your serialized file is it's tempered and it has added some malicious code. So to avoid that, make sure that you are using a secure deserialization practice to prevent a deserialization vulnerabilities. Use sandboxing. Place application in an isolated environment like containers, VMs, or sandboxes to prevent malicious code from impacting the host system or other applications. Sandboxing limit the scope and effects of RCE. So we have seen that how the ransomware has propagated like to 230K computers. So that is because if the one computer is getting spread that ransomware to the another computer through the network. So but if your environment is isolated, then you can avoid those things. Okay, so these are the ways you can mitigate the remote execution threat. Now the fifth one is outdated softwares and plugins. So outdated softwares and plugins refer to the software programs or add-ons that haven't been updated to the latest version provided by their developers. So we must be saying that every time when you upload anything or install anything, any software install, it is get updated. like your Sitecore version is also getting updated. So this happen when there are some patches are released which is not updated on your software. When software is outdated, it may lack the important security patches, feature updates, or bug fixes, making it vulnerable to cyber attack. Attackers often target these vulnerabilities to gain unauthorized access, execute malware, or steal data. So this is the common issue or a common problem, okay, where we not update our system, our Windows system, our software, whichever you are using it. So let's take an example. There is a company, leading company in America, which have a data breach in 2017. What happened is this company is using Apache Strut and they have not updated the version. They are working on the old version only. So outdated software was there. Okay, and the attackers has targeted that system and they run the arbitrary code such that they have collected the PI data from this company's database. Okay, which is they are now having the unauthorized access to PI data, and that gets saved into the hackers database from the that company. Okay, so they have got the uh, penalties also for this. So why this has happened? Because there's a lack of timely patching. They have not patched the software, insufficient network segmentation, poor intervention and detection and monitoring. So there's no monitoring to properly applied, and the storage, the PI data which is stored, that is also encrypted storage data. So that is also easily plain data that can be readable. So that also a problem. Okay, so this is what happened in outdated source. If you have outdated software and plugins, okay, this is a classic example. I'm not giving the name of the company, but it is a leading company in America. Okay, so this will also hit their repeated reputation. Okay, so let's see why this is critical. Security vulnerabilities. Developer release the updates to patch security holes. Outdated software often has known vulnerabilities that attackers can easily exploit. So it has a security vulnerabilities, right? So developers are every software has it, some they catch it and then developer release the update to fix that. Okay, and if you the reason behind those patches is that only that you should be more secured, but if you are not applying those security vulnerabilities, then it's a problem, and the attackers can exploit that. Sitecore also releases many vulnerabilities patches, so you should be always updating those. Okay, so similarly, the other systems are also updating. Windows are updating their patches every month. Compatibility issues. The older version might not work well with a newer software, leading to errors or crashes which can disrupt the business operation. It may not be a security threat, but it's a continuity threat that you are still on the older version, then the other system may become a new software, new version, that it may not be compatible, that it will create a problem. Loss of support. The company stops supporting older version, meaning there will be no more patches, updates, or technical help. So your software version is low. So assume that you are still on the Sitecore 6 version. It is not supported. So there will not be any patches which will release. Any updates will be done. There will not be any help. So if the attackers attacks that, then there will be a problem, right? They can exploit your vulnerabilities in that case. So loss of support. Performance issues. Outdated software can be slower, less reliable, have more bugs than updated versions. Every time when the new version comes, it has a performance related work always. Any software you pick, any CMS you pick, they will release a new version. There will be a fixes and there will be a performance related changes also which need to be done. So performance issues will be there. Compliance issues. Organization may fail to meet a regulatory requirement, resulting in fines and legal consequences. So this is the reason why you should be keep updating your software. So let's see how to mitigate this risk. Regular updates and patching, obviously. So you are having an old version of software, then you have to regularly update the update, and you should apply the patches. Then enable automatic updates wherever possible, or set reminders for regular update check, and this ensures that software receives critical security patches as soon as they are available. Retire unsupported software. So replace software that is no longer supported by its developer, as it will not receive any security upload or fixes, leaving it perpetually vulnerable. Patch management system for larger organization or centralized patch management system can automate the track software updates across multiple devices, reducing the chance of unpatched system. You must have seen that Windows updates are regularly done, automatically done. So that kind of a patch management system you should apply it on your application. Use software inventory tools. So there are many softwares you are using it, so you should be using the software inventory tools to manage it. Use tools that track software and plug-in version across your devices. This tools alerts you to outdated software, making it easier to identify and prioritize the updates. So use software inventory tools to to make it easy for you to update the older softwares or old updates. Restrict administrative privilege. Limit the administrative access to install or update software. This prevents unauthorized installation of an insecure plugin or software that users might forget to update. And then the last one, this is also important. Educate users on cyber hygiene. So training employees to recognize the importance of keeping software updated can prevent delays in patching. This awareness is especially important if users need to initially update manually. So you must be getting the Windows patch update notification. If the user is not doing it regularly, it is just canceling those updates, then it's a problem, right? So you should be educating your resources that these patches are very important and you need to update this as soon as it comes. So these are the ways you can mitigate the old software issue or old software complaints. All right, everyone, that's it for this video. I realize there is a lot to cover on this topic. So to keep the things manageable, I have divided it into two parts. So this was part one, and in part two we will dive even deeper to cover everything you need to know. So if you found this video helpful, please give it thumbs up, share it with your friends, and drop a comment with any questions or thoughts. I would love to hear from you, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit that bell icon so you will be notified when part 2 is out. Join our community as we continue exploring more into Sitecore and other technical topics. Thanks for watching and see you in next one.